In this tutorial, we're going to talk about elevation changes for modular sets and working in games. So previously, let me switch this out to be a quad view by hitting Alt-W. There we go. All right, so previously we had gone through, we had set up our grid so that it was 100 units across, right? And so we're working inside this volume of 400 units. So a good rule of thumb for when you're working in games, I'm going to click here in perspective. I'm going to come down and make a box. And I'm going to go ahead and make it the 400 by 400, but then I'm going to do half the height, 200, and hit create. All right. So taking this piece, let's go over here, convert that at poly. Click on the element, go into move, and I just want to move all the geo here so it sits over in positive 200. All right. So a good rule of thumb when you're working in games is that for every unit you want to change elevation, you need to traverse 2 units in distance. And so it's a 2-to-1 aspect ratio. So if you're using vertex target weld, I'm going to target weld this down. And there you go. That's your basic elevation change. It's a 2-to-1 aspect ratio. If I'm going to go 2 units in distance, I need to go 1 unit up. All right. So in this case, I'm going 400. I'm going up 200. So that looks kind of steep. So visually, you'd want to have something like this be more like a set of stairs, right? So let's go ahead and clone this guy as a copy. I'm going to move him over to the side here. And I'm going to take the edge. I'm just going to move that down to 100. So this looks like a better ramp, right? You could get away with a very extreme set of angles for a set of stairs, but not so much for a ramp. It's going to start looking silly. So really, in order to go up one flight, I'm going to come over here to a side. In order to go up one flight, you're going to have 2 sets of stairs, and you're going to have 4 sets of ramps. And so for this, I'm going to go ahead and use Tool, Array, and I'm going to make it a total of 4 as an instance. And let's say it needs to be 400 units in length and 100 units in height. And if we hit preview, there we go. All right, so it's for stairs, it's going to be 2. For ramps, it's going to be 4. And those are the basic rules. And so with that 2-to-1 aspect ratio, you're going to kind of work. That's going to be your basic math settings. So let's come in here. I'm going to go to create. You do not have to do this. I'm doing this just for purposes of the tutorial. I'm going to click here. And so really what we're looking at is our basic height is 400 unit height. And so you need to keep in mind, how thick did you make your floor? In ours, we did 40 unit floor thickness. All right. And so for each one of these, you're going to have to divide it up. So if I clone this down, right, I'm going to call this stairs. Right. So the stairs, because there's 2 of them, that means it's going to be 200 units, and then 2 units, 20 units for the floor thickness. And so each one of our stairs is going to have to actually be 220 in height. And so if we look here for ramps, right, I'll change this to say ramps. Oops. Those would be 100 units. And then because we have to divide that 40 units of height, that's going to be 10. So that means each one of our ramp pieces is going to have to be 110 units tall. And that way, when we build our environment, we're actually building it so that we have the thickness of the difference between the floors is going to be built into it. Okay? So those are going to be our values over here on the side, 220, 110. All right? And if you build something at a different aspect ratio, it's going to be different. All right? But basically, I could take this one ramp I have right here, and I could just finish this guy off. Like, I could select him. I could assign one of my materials to it, any one of those. And really, it's going to depend on how you're going to use it. In this case, let's go ahead and we'll just assign this whole thing to it. And we'll give it the same texture as the floor. So let's just call that 2. There we go. And then we can just go ahead and box map it UVW, set it to box, 400 by 400 by 400. And then, oops, let's go ahead and we'll move this guy back to 0. And then we can go ahead and do that trick we were doing before, where we just set that gizmo so it's sitting there at 200 space. So now if we look at him, I'm going to hit Alt-W to maximize it. Now he's sitting there. So you see the UVs don't totally line up. But let's be honest, you're really not going to want a ramp that looks like this. You'll probably build some kind of extra frame to cover it up if you're going to be using a ramp on an exterior. Right? Otherwise, I mean, you could potentially open up your UV unwrap, open the UV editor, and you could start taking those pieces and moving them over to the side and start taking them. Oops, let's go to edge. I'm going to select this edge here, deselect this guy, and then stitch them. Same thing over here, and stitch them. There you go. So now you see how the texture is going to wrap around the side. Oops. All right, so that's one way. Of course, it doesn't line up right here. So you would have to do something to fix that. One thing would be, like I said, it'll look a lot better if you actually build some kind of railing to go along the side that sits here. So that's a ramp, right? And so then we could call this ramp. The only thing we'd have to double check is just make sure it's the proper height. Is it 110 units? If you remember, when I was first setting it up, I just went ahead and divided it. So what I would have to do is actually take that edge and just make sure that's at that 110 unit. There we go. So if you're going to have multiple ramps, one thing you'll probably want to do then is also come out here and 400 by 400, but at 110, hit create, and now you got a nice little platform so that if I select this and move from to 200 and 200, there we go. Now we would have a ramp platform. And so you could call this ramp landing. All right, so that way you could move this over and set it here. And then you could go ahead and you could clone this guy over. Right, and of course all the placement would be a lot easier working inside Unreal Editor where you have the snaps working. Right, and then raise this guy up and put him over there. And basically this is how you could go about building individual ramps that go around. Okay, so I'll just delete those. All right, so let's talk a little bit about stairs. So we can build stairs. One thing to keep in mind, it's nice to have stairs that kind of, they don't start right at the base and they don't end at an angle. So one thing I like to do is I'm just going to go ahead and make a plane. And I'm going to make that from above. So I'm going to select this guy, right click and say hide unselected. Oh, and what was the height again? Grab this edge. Remember, it needs to be 220. So there we go. Okay, come over here to create plane, and I'm going to make a plane that is 400 by 400 length and width segments at 1 and hit create. So there's my plane. Next, let's convert him to an edit poly. Go into element and move him over so that he sits at that 200 spot. I'm going to select this guy here, and I'm just going to right click, go into object properties, and I am going to set 0.1 so he's transparent. All right, now I got my plane. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move this up to, I'm going to move him up to that 220 height. All right, let's open up our material editor again. All right, here we are in our material editor. I'm going to select my plane, assign material to selection, and I'm going to go ahead and just use my wall texture. So now let's go in. I'm going to do UVW X-form and just tile this 2 times. There we go. That's got it tiling like the rest of the stuff I had in my environment. Convert that to poly. And let's go in here, and I'm going to select these 2 edges and connect them. And I want to slide this down. Oops. Keep that at 1. I'm going to use the slide feature, and I want to move this edge down to about here. There we go. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm just going to delete these other edges. I'm going to select these 2 and connect, but I'm just going to set that back to 0 so it's right in the center. So now I could take this edge and drop it down to 0, and I can take this edge and move him down. All right, so let's look at him from the side here. So raise that up. So it's sitting at 13.5. That's a good height for a stair. I can take this edge and move him over so he's sitting underneath there. I could even, if I want to make my stairs look a little bit nicer, I can grab this edge and do a slight chamfer on it. So then the light will hit it a little bit nicer. Grab the whole thing and just, make sure it's on one smoothing group. Okay. So now I have that one stair. Let's grab those verts again and raise those back up. Okay. So now, if I zoom out, I'm going to take this and do Tools, Array. I'm going to reset the parameters just because I'd made some changes before. I'm going to do Preview. And now along Y, or because I'm in the left view here, I need to move them out along X, but just far enough that they're going to be connecting. I need to adjust them on Y so that they do the proper height change. And then I'm just going to keep adding them. It looks like they could probably go up just a little bit taller. There we go. So let's add some more until we get to the top. Now notice it doesn't quite get to the top here. That's okay. Don't worry about that. I'm going to set them to, all right, I'm going to leave them as instances and click OK. All right. So now they look a little weird, don't they? Because if you look at, I'm going to right click on this green guide that I have. I'm going to hit freeze it. I'm going to freeze that selection. This looks a little weird, right? Because it looks like, it doesn't look like actual bricks. So let's take what we got and let's do a slight adjustment to the UVs. I'm going to do UVW X-form, and I'm just going to stretch them a little bit along V. So I'm just going to click and drag this down. There we go. So there's a little edge right there at the lip. I think that looks good. So we'll do that 1.5. We can even do it less. We can do 1.25. I think 1.5 works good. If we're feeling like it's stretching a little bit, we can even change this to 1.5 as well to make them look better. All right, so there's our stairs. Now when we look at it, we see that everything matches. And it looks a little bit odd. So I'm going to right click on this guy and say collapse to. Make sure he stays unique. I'm going to grab all these guys, go into object properties, and uncheck show frozen and gray. All right, and now I'm going to go through and I'm going to select not every other one. I'm going to skip, and then I'll skip to this guy, and then skip up, and then get. I'm just going to kind of do this sort of random selection. And now I'm going to come over here to make unique. I'm going to click on that. And it asks me this question, do I want to make these selected items unique with respect to each other? And no, I don't. I want to turn these guys into their own, kind of their own set. And now I can do UVWX form, and I could do a slight offset on them. All right, so if I take a look, if I offset these by 0.125 units, it's going to offset those bricks. But it only does it on the ones that I currently have selected. So now you see we're getting a little bit more variety. Oops, I'm going to undo that because I want to keep those selected. I'm going to right click and freeze them. All right. So now if I go through and select, these are all the ones that are still connected. So I'm just going to deselect the ones that are right next to each other. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come down here and make unique. And I'm going to say no because I want to make these their own kind of subset. I'm going to do UVWX form. So last time I did a offset by 0.25. I'm going to do an offset by 0.5. And then if we take a look, you see how we have all of this different variety happening in here. There's different variety for how they're laid out. And it starts to make it look a little bit more unique, right? It's not just the same thing. You get a little bit more randomization happening in there. All right, so let's unfreeze all. I'm going to go ahead and select this green one and freeze him again. So I can select this bottommost guy here. And I'm just going to right click on this and convert him to an edit poly because I want to make this one completely unique. Because what I'm going to do is come up here to attach, click on the attach settings. I'm going to select all of these stairs and say attach. Now these are all one mesh. I'm going to go into border. I'm going to region select everything and then hold control and click on vertex point so I only have those border vertices selected. And what I'm going to do is open up weld and I'm going to slowly increase my weld threshold until I see that number change from 112 to something else. See, it's at 86. So now if we zoom out and go into border and reselect, you see that only the outer edges. So everything's been turned into one nice continuous mesh. All right, so from here, just to finish it off, we got to make sure it's the right height. Remember I said before, don't worry if your stairs don't match the perfect height, because we're just going to put an FFD on, add a control point, and select the control point, and we're just going to raise that up to that 220 height that we need. So there we go. There's our stairs, and they're coming up to that height. Don't worry about the fact that they don't start right away. I mean, you certainly could take those, and if you want to bring them more so that they start right at the edge, you could just bring that down to 0, and there they are. All right, so now you got a set of stairs, and convert that to an edit poly. All right, one thing we'll want to do is make sure we move that pivot, so that pivot is sitting at 0. All right, and so we call it stairs. One thing that we would have to do is just finish off this mesh, right, as you would normally. Before we do that, let's unfreeze all. I'm going to select this. Let's go through. I'm going to finish off. Sorry about that. I'm going to select this vert, pull it out. You want to have a nice transition up, so I'm going to pull it out so the angle starts here for the stairs. I'm just going to pull this guy over and then just grab this back polygon and extrude him out and say OK. There we go. And now we have our, if I select the stairs, all right, it's just stairs. So I can grab this guy and just say UCX underscore stairs. Stairs are an awkward shape, and it's nice to have that little transition. So I would say go ahead and make custom collision for your stairs. So I'm going to hide that now. And now to finish off the stairs, we can go ahead and finish them. It really depends. Do you want to have stairs that are freestanding? If that's the case, then you do need to build some geo out there. And again, if you just built rails that ran along the side, it'd be really easy. If you want to make your life hard, you could go through and actually start. What I did was I held select and clone that edge down, lowered that to 0, grab the edge over here, and then just bridge between the two. And then this becomes a real painful process of going through and just bridging each of these edges together, like so. All right, I'm just going to slowly work my way through here, kind of bridging each of these. Now that I would say is not going to be the most efficient way to do this. I think that the better way for us to go about it would be something closer to just taking one of these edges. I'm just going to rotate I'm going to hold shift and rotate it 90 degrees, which is going to clone it to an element. And then if I just rotate that another 90 degrees, I can pull it over. Let's grab this edge. I hit ring so I can go in and do a connect. Oops, not bridge. I want to connect. And just slide that down to right about here. And I can grab this bottom and delete. So now if I take this guy, I can hold shift, rotate him 90, and just move him over. Let's look at him from the front. There we go. All right, if I move him over and come in here and weld those together, grab this whole thing, slide that over, and I can just take this and rotate it 90, or I'm sorry, 180. Move it over here, grab those verts, and weld those together. It gives me this nice little cylinder. And what am I going to do with it? Well, I'm going to hold border, select those, go into vert, and then just make sure I crank this up. There we go. Weld those all together. Go to border, auto smooth it. And now I can just take this whole thing and move it over here. And if I just kind of set it right out here, I can bring them over this way, and I'll just have to adjust it. So it kind of, let's get that at the 400 edge. Oh, looks like this whole thing kind of came out a little far. Let's grab those and set those to 400. There we go. And now I got these edges at the elevation, which I can kind of adjust them. Move this guy out to 0. There we go. And so he doesn't need to be quite as high. He can come down a little bit lower. Alright. And so now I got this nice little rail. I could even grab it and scale it in, make it a little bit thinner. And now if I just move him over, I can move him so he kind of sits right here at the edge. And I'll just grab my stairs, go into the border. So I'm just going to grab the border and then hold control and click on the vert so I can deselect. Oops. Come on, go into border. Alright, now I have that. Oh, there's a giant polygon on the bottom. Let's delete that. There we go. And there's one on the back. I'm going to delete that too. Go to border, click on it, hold control and click vert, deselect this side, and then move them so that they're sitting in a little bit. There we go. So we can take this guy now, and then we'll just hold shift and drag to drag him over so that he's kind of sitting on the edge here. And do the same thing. Go back into border, hold control and click vert and deselect this side so you can kind of pull this one in a little bit. There we go. Okay. Some final stuff. Let's go in and we'll need to cap off this guy. Orbit around. Cap off the top. And then of course what we'll need to do is UV unwrap those. We got a little bit more UV work to do though, because we need to grab this edge here. I'm going to hold shift, just drag this down, and come around the side and grab the bottommost edge, that new edge I made here, and bridge between the two. So let's see what we got. So there we go. It's got a little bit of thickness. Let's grab these two edges and connect them. So we can bring this over. There we go. So what is it? Let's just put this at -10. And then if this base is what, 204? So let's just do, if that's 204, yeah. All right. Just going to eyeball this to make sure that looks about even. That's good enough. There we go. And then let's grab our two rails. And we're just going to we're going to hold Control and click on Polygon and deselect both the top sides. And then just kind of slide, oops, as well as the edges. And slide those down so that that base, oops, zoom out, there we go. The base is kind of underneath there. There we go. And then let's take this edge here. I'll just pull this in a little bit. So now it's not going to be Z fighting with that outer edge. All right, we can even grab these verts and just pull these in just a little bit more. All right, our last step here is just to create some UVs for it. So if we slap an unwrap UVW on, go into Open UV Editor, what we can do is select, orbit around, select those new polygons that we made, and just planar map them and hit Best Align. Then I'm going to peel it. And there we go. It's got some brick on it. And what we can do is just scale that up a little bit. Or actually, there's a more scientific way to do that. Convert to Edit Poly. Those polygons are still selected. We can put a UVWX form and just set the tile to 2. There you go. So now that'll match the other tiles. There we go. Don't worry about it not lining up with your stair UVs, because chances are you're not going to see this. At the top it's going to connect. There's going to be a floor here. At the bottom there's going to be a floor there, so you don't really need to worry about those. We just need to convert that at poly to finish it off, and then put one more unwrap on, open UV editor, and then these guys, the very end polygons. Remember we put those in there? We want to make sure we select those and planar map them. And let's peel them. And then if we come up here and select our brick, we just want to make sure that they're sitting on some brick polygons. All right. Yeah, just move them over, because you want to make sure that they kind of match the general color. All right, convert that at poly. All right, now we got a set of stairs. Those stairs are the right height. We can come in here and we can do auto smooth on them. They'll be all set. Our final step, I'm going to change to 2, and I'm just going to move what I got, because this is the first time I'm doing it. Go into Polygon, and I'm going to do Pack, so it packs everything together. One thing you could do that's going to make your light map a little bit better is for something like the stairs, if you go through and like stitch them together, what will happen is the light map will be a little bit nicer on it, because then it doesn't break it up across many multiple pieces. It's going to actually kind of combine them together, which would be really nice. You'll have a nicer blend going across it. So if you can, in cases like this, it does kind of help. Makes it a little bit nicer. So just go through, stitch those together. Don't stitch it with the back or wrap it around, because that ends up making it, that could actually look a little bit weird. I could stitch this one, stitch this one over here, maybe grab this side. Oops. Maybe grab this, I'm going to grab this edge here of the rail and stitch that, as well as this one here. All right. I think that's probably it. I'll just go ahead and pack those, and then grab everything in polygon mode and just say Tools, Relax, by Polygon Angle. There, that kind of relaxes them a little bit. Then we could just pack them again and then convert to Edit Poly. So now we have our stairs. If we unhide all, let's take a look at that. Oops. We're not going to do that. I'm going to unfreeze by name, and I want to unfreeze my stairs. There we go. There's my stair collision. And so since I made this set of stair collision that's kind of freestanding, what I'll want to do is come in here and actually raise this up so it sits right there, and then take this guy and move him down so he kind of sits like this to kind of match the general collision that I have. So there you go. That's the process of making stairs. You would export those out. You could make this could potentially connect to your floor, but that's the basic process for stairs. You go ahead and export that out.